Here's a comment from the 765 Notary. She says, I use a Google Voice number for the first year of my notary business and it didn't hinder me in any way. I ported the number to my carrier eventually, but you can't tell the difference between, and she goes on to say, the Google Voice number and the Verizon number. And thank you for that comment, by the way, 765 Notary. Let me explain something. So it may not seem like the Google Voice affected you in any way, but let me break this down just a little bit further because I hear this all the time. And the analogy that I'll use is, if you need to go to work, you need to drive to work, you can drive there in a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, Mercedes, Honda, Toyota, Ford, BMW, Cadillac. The car will still get you there because the purpose is to be an engine with four wheels, right? It'll still take you to point A to point B. Here's the difference, though. The reason why I use that analogy, because it is the delivery. There's a difference when I arrive in a Ferrari versus I arrive in my Toyota. And also the purchasing experience from when I buy a Rolex watch from the time I buy a Seiko or a Casio from Walmart. See, the Rolex comes in a box and they have to unfold it and then they have to wipe it down, then they have to clean it, and then they present it to you with white gloves versus the Walmart Casio, Seiko watch. I basically take it to the checkout stand and self-checkout myself. It's all about the delivery of the product. In this case, your notary business, it is a service, but it also is the delivery of the product. You see, we all have a notary commission. Am I right? It doesn't matter what state you're in. If you are a commission notary, you essentially have the license to do what anyone else who has a commission that they can do. Herein lies the difference. The way in which the service is delivered to the client, this is what makes up the difference. So when somebody calls and they hear, please hold while the Google Voice subscriber is contacted, and then the dial tone and it rings, versus when they call a notary enterprise, a notary business, a real notary business, then they hear, thank you for calling ABC Notary. Here is a few questions that we will ask you in order to deliver the best selection for your notary needs. And then a automatic voice spells out the location, the number of signatures, and confirms identification. You see, at the end of the day, those two scenarios, they're similar in the sense that the person needs a notary, right? That doesn't change. However, the service and the way in which it is presented and delivered, the person A who uses Google Voice, the expectation is that the entire delivery of the service is going to be of Google Voice free, quote unquote, free quality. Whereas the person who uses an automated service like Sabrina AI, like I use, and there's an automated voice that picks up on the first ring, there is no dial tone. The expectation is that they're going to get that client, they're going to receive a confirmation email. They're going to receive consistent courtesy reminders. They're going to get a receipt that's emailed to them and text message to them. The notary's going to show up in a suit. Like, if the notary showed up in a suit, it wouldn't be a surprise because that is the expectation. We set the bar high. So it may not make sense to somebody who doesn't charge, I can't even say a reasonable amount. I would say something that you wouldn't expect. That's the reason, that's the difference between people who charge $2 and $5 and $10 and $20. And then they complain when someone else charges $200. And they're like, well, how can you charge $200 for one signature? Well, the reason why is because from the very moment that the person picks up the phone, the expectation is set high. And therefore, by the time the price is delivered, it's not such a shock. It's not a surprise. So I say all that to say, yeah, you may not have noticed a difference. And I'm not even saying specifically you because, thank you for that comment. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. But if you're watching this video and you use Google Voice, I'm not telling you that is wrong. I'm just saying that don't be surprised when someone is shocked by your attempt to charge them more than they expected. The perception in their mind was, okay, you have a Gmail email account, then how are you charging $100 for this appointment versus somebody who uses an automated system? Now the expectation is reasonable, right? It's like, okay, well, the price for this is $200. That's probably what I expected, right? Because the level of service throughout the interaction is relatively high. And just to finish it off, just another point, I want to make this clear that you see this a lot with people who use let's say if you want if you do own a real business, right? You operate a real business, and let's say you wanted to not self-fund it, right? Which you should never do. You should never self-fund a business, right? It should always be other people's money, right? So in order for you to obtain some of these alternative financing options, then you can't use your personal number. A Google Voice number doesn't qualify as a business number. I don't even think Google advertises the product as a business number. I think they just advertise it just as an alternative to, don't take my word for this. I may have to look that up. I might just be making that up. But I don't believe that Google advertises Google Voice as a business number. I just think it's just an alternative or an option for just a regular phone, your regular number. But I know for sure that when you are getting for example, let's say a lot of people use virtual offices. Like, you need an actual address. Like, you can't just use a virtual office. You need a physical address. Doesn't this have to be yours, but it has to be a physical address, not some made up virtual address that doesn't really exist or gets forwarded to another post office or some other type of address. So that is in line with the whole idea about having a business phone number, having a business address. If you want to be legit and legitimate on paper, you want to qualify for, business credit, and you want to be taken serious by the perception that you are operating a legit business, don't use Google Voice. You don't have to listen to me, by the way. You don't have to take my word for it. But I'm just telling you that, what we've tested over the years and what we've found is that when people hear Google Voice, they immediately have a right to lowball you.